and I'm an alumni of Teen Mania. I was an intern in 1996 and graduated in 97. And I'm just going to share a little bit about fasting. As you guys know, that was a big part of what we did here at the Honor Academy. We fasted one day a week, every other week, and then we also had fasting LTEs. We really just got to seek the Lord and hear from Him. And so I just want to talk about, fasting as a part of our lifestyle and our relationship with God, and how important it truly is. We all know that biblical fasting is just refraining from food for a spiritual purpose. And the practice of fasting is not just limited to when we were here at the Honor Academy or for pastors or people that are high up, but fasting needs to be a part of our everyday journey with the Lord. Not meaning that we fast every day, but that it's a part of our relationship with God on an ongoing basis. When you look at Matthew 6, it clearly points out, it talks about giving, it talks about prayer, and it talks about fasting. All three of those things that need to be a part of our relationship with God. And so I just want to break down fasting a little bit for you and just talk about the benefits of what it does for your life. And the first one is that fasting breaks bondages off your life. If you turn to Isaiah 58 says, starting in verse 6, Is this not the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? To break every yoke, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. And in verse 8, I'm going to jump down to verse 8, it says, Then your light shall break forth like the morning, your healing shall spring forth speedily. I love that. Your healing shall spring forth speedily. Of course, it's talking about fasting here. And your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. That word yoke in verse 6 actually means an addiction that's causing you to stumble. And when we think of addiction, most of the time we think of like smoking or drinking, but it can be an addiction or a stronghold that we have in our life that's fear or anxiety or worry or something like that. So number one, fasting breaks bondages off your life. Number two, fasting produces intimacy with Christ, which if you guys remember our time at the Honor Academy, you remember those fasting LTEs, and it truly did that. Fasting produces intimacy with Christ. Fasting brings us into a deeper and more intimate and powerful relationship with God. If we turn to 1 Corinthians 2, verse 9 through 11, it says, But it is written, Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of a man the things which God has prepared for those who love Him. Verse 10 says, But God has revealed them to us through His Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, yes, the deep things of God. When we fast, we're starving our flesh and we're feeding our spirit. And the Spirit is what searches the deep things of God. So fasting puts us in a position that produces intimacy with Christ because our spirit is searching the deep things of God. The Word says that when we sow to the Spirit, we reap the Spirit things. And that's what you do when you're fasting. You're starving your flesh and you're feeding your spirit. So number two, fasting produces an intimacy with Christ. Number three is fasting is an open reward over your life. If you turn to Matthew 6, Verse 16, it says, Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces that they may appear to be men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they will have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you do not appear to be men fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees you in the secret will reward you openly. When we fast, when we take that time to starve our flesh and feed our spirit and run after God and search for the deep things of God, our Father who sees us rewards us openly in our life, and that's awesome. 4, fasting generates discipline. Fasting generates discipline. Fasting, whether corporately or individually, is a private discipline for your life, which we all know. You can't eat. So you have to, it's controlling your mind, it's controlling your flesh, that your spirit will win every single time. A great example is obviously exercise, which we all did too while we were here at Honor Academy, creates discipline over our body to get it into shape. Fasting is the same thing. It's a discipline to get your spirit into shape, to feed your spirit. Romans 12:1-2 says, "Do not, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God." When we fast, it creates that discipline, that we're not conforming to the patterns of the world, but we're transforming ourselves into the likeness of God to prove what is the good and acceptable, pleasing work and will of our God. Point about fasting and the benefits that it has in our life is it's supernatural. It's supernatural. Great people in the Bible who had a supernatural experience, they fasted before it happened. A great example is Jesus. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights before his ministry began in the world. If we look at Old Testament examples of just something supernatural taking place and them fasting ahead of time, Moses fasted for 40 days and nights before he received the 10 Commandments. Esther called a 3-day fast, and she saved a nation. Hannah was fasting when she went to the temple to pray for a child, and then of course we know she received a child after she was barren. In the New Testament there's some examples as well. Paul, 3 days without eating when God called him and told him his assignment on earth. And Peter was fasting and praying when God told him he was going to preach to the Gentiles. Supernatural things take place after fasting, because you have starved your flesh, you've fed your spirit, you've sought out the deep things of God, and through that he gives an open reward on your life. And so I encourage you, if you have not made fasting a part of your life or part of your relationship with God, to do so, because there's so many great benefits and God is going to do so many great things in your life through that. Thank you so much.